and Happy New Year! Today is the first Friday in 2020, and I'm excited to be here today and giving you your free Friday practicing tip. So, in today's tip, I'd like to share some ways to help you to have a more intentional practice. Really, this tip could be given at any time of year. I really feel like it's appropriate right now, especially as we're beginning this new year with new goals and new aspirations, and hopefully a lot of intention behind those goals. So that's kind of the idea behind this one too. It's a tip that will help you to have a much more purposeful, meaningful, intentional practice. My students know this about me. I'm not one to do silly things, or I shouldn't say silly because I am actually pretty silly, meaningless things. When it comes to practice, I feel like our time is limited, and I like to do the things that make sense and practice smarter, not harder. So today's practice tip will help you with that. So today's practice tip is a 4-step process, something to be applied especially to areas in your music that you're practicing and perfecting, areas that maybe you tend to make mistakes in for one reason or another. Maybe a note is out of tune, a bowing's incorrect, a rhythm is mixed up, and it's meant to be a practice to meant to be applied in your practice to areas where you tend to make mistakes and that need some really specific detailed work. So the step process is this: pause, think, decide, and act. Again, pause, think, decide, and act. As you're playing those passages, I'll give you an example. So maybe in a passage, every time you play this passage, you're supposed to play a C sharp, but you always play a C natural. In your passage work, as you're really working in detail on that passage, every time you come across that, right before you're meant to play that C sharp, pause. Okay, pausing creates intention, allows us to think of what's happening. So pause, next, think. Think of what you want to happen. Think of what's meant to happen. Okay, I'm meant to play a C sharp. Decide what's going to happen and actually state it out loud. Say C sharp, then act and proceed and play your C sharp. This is a great way of being able to practice and to be able to actually practice smarter, not harder. So you're not just repeating and playing passages over and over and over and over and hoping they get better. So as you're practicing, let's say you decide to take that passage, that short passage of a measure or two, for example, and play it 10 times. 10 to 15 times. Each time you come across that, pause right before the note or section that's incorrect. Pause. Think of what you want to happen. Decide what is going to happen, what you want to have happen, and actually state it out loud, whether it's saying C sharp or saying up bow or saying half note or whatever the tricky part is there. Then act. Proceed and play it correctly. Practice it like this with those same 4 steps. 10, 15 times or so. And as you practice, with time, it will get easier and easier to play it correctly. Then go back and practice it again, maybe 5 to 10 times without those 4 steps. You'll find it makes it easier to play the correct things and actually makes it into a habit. Try this practicing tip. I found it incredibly effective in my own practicing and with my students. Give it a shot. Have some wonderful practicing. Have a wonderful week, guys.